Yes, it should be working. Just a quick yes in the chat would help, or in the comments of this. All right, perfect. So, as all slides are, we start out with the title of the workshop. Very boring. Next.js framework. The special thing about this workshop, let's say, is that it's kind of an intermediate workshop. If you're learning Next.js, you're probably past the beginner phase in your learning journey. There is nothing to tell you, oh, you like, there is no notification you get or award or medal to tell you that you've reached an intermediate level in your learning journey, or that you've finished, soi-disant finished your learning journey. Uh, so it's best to just jump in if you have some. So what you're gonna need for this workshop specifically is some React experience, maybe some Node.js experience, though that's optional. Why React? Because Next.js is a framework built on top of React. It uses much of the same syntax as React when it comes to building the user interface, and it uses also pretty much the same concepts when it comes to rendering the DOM. When it comes to what the DOM is the structure or the tree of components or of elements that you see, HTML elements that you see on a web page. A quick explanation. You should know the DOM by now, it doesn't matter much. Okay, so it's an intermediate workshop. Don't get afraid or anything like that. You're probably, I'm 80% certain that you're ready if you're here to take on a Next.js framework. And this is day 1 of 5. All right. So what we're going to be learning specifically this day is we're going to be learning about static and dynamic websites. What does each mean? Because it's important for Next.js. And then we're going to learn about the rise of client-side rendered frameworks. We'll learn what client-side rendering is in the first place. It's a very trendy word. It's a word that if you say, هياو server-side rendering, static-side generation, incremental, what is it called? Incremental static regeneration. They're like trendy words that you can go home to a engineer, let's say, any technical person. They'll feel like you know what you're talking about. And they're also important words. So that's why they're important to learn. And we'll explain the reasons for the creations of some of the famous who beloved, love-hated, because they're also pretty mixed relationship with them. Frameworks such as React, Angular, Vue.js, there are like thousands. We'll explain why or hundreds. We'll explain why there are so many, and then we'll move on to, at this point, we would have understood client-side rendering or server-side rendering, why we would do each, why we wouldn't. And بعدها we move on to hybrid, the hybrid model اللي utilises both client-side rendering or server-side rendering. And at that point, we will finally get to the subject of our workshop, which is Next.js. Although everything here is important, if you understand this, I think understanding this is perhaps some of the most difficult when it comes to learning Next.js. The reason for that is not many, like if you open up documentation, this part of this content, let's say, is the one that's not as emphasized, not as well covered as the other parts. You kind of learn it piece by piece over time when you are working with the code. which is obvious باسكو الدوكيومنتيشن باغ اكزومبل تاع Next.js ماهيش حابه تعلمك شغل ماشي philosophical theoretical subjects. Theoretical subjects are for university, they're boring, no one wants to, so they don't make money, they don't build websites, etc. So I guess they're not the emphasis, but we need to cover them here, and we will, to give you a very strong base that you will build on, right? So the first concept we need to understand, luckily we're going to jump into code straight away. Like I said, first day, not so much code as much as slides, كان بزاف slides, not so much code. This is يعني luckily الكود اللي كاين راح يكون مع البداية. Okay, we need to discuss the fact that websites themselves, يعني شغل كان نجيب لك ويب سايت ولا وش هو a website, it's something simple. A website هي a document اللي تشوفها on a website. تسمى when you go to a URL تفتح لك الباجة هذيك, you see a document, وهذيك document gives you information تقدر تقراها sometimes ولا often هذه النهارات تقدر تنتراجي معاها كي تكليكي باتن باغ اكزومبل تخرج لك سايد منيو ولا تخرج لك يعني a menu, a model, كاش ما like تفتح لك بلاصة وين تكتب كومنتير etc. and so the simplest thing that a website ولا a website باش يكون useful يقدر يكون سامبل. شغل هذه هي المين ايديا اللي راني حابكم تدوها. Right, currently ولا في هذه النهارات or web development moves quickly, so we don't want to get distracted by all these fancy, I won't call them gimmicks because they're very useful, mais fancy frameworks, fancy practices, fancy user interfaces or animations, so we don't miss the main fact اللي هي انه الويب سايت عنده functionality اللي usually تكون very simple. Simple as in, for example, you have content that you want your users to see. تحوسهم يعرفوا, par exemple, next event, let's say for جي سهرة وقت تكون, you want them to know وش راهو صاري. par exemple هذا سيت تاع أخبار, تحوسهم يعرفوا وش راهو صاري somewhere in the world, read the latest news, etc. Or you want them to submit to you, to give you some kind of information. For example, كاين form that they have to fill out in order to register to هذيك event that you're hosting, or in order to create an account, or to whatever. يعني it's simple. You probably can think of examples yourselves. Right, or update data, of course, mutate data. I like to call it mutating data. Mutating data includes adding data, yani creating data or changing data. So you either mutate data or you fetch or read هذيك data as a user. So the simplest website that we can create is just pure HTML, nothing else. It gives us what we need. It gives the user all that he needs. And I actually have an example here that I can show you of truly one of the simplest websites that I have seen, but also surprisingly for one of the most important companies pretty much in the world when it comes to investments. Berkshire Hathaway is a very famous market cap. It's a very famous company. Their market cap ولا الفاليو تاع هذه الكومباني is 890 مليار دولار. So close to $1 trillion. $1 trillion. This makes it one of the most valuable companies in the world. وهذا هو السيت ويب تاعهم. If we can go down نعرف إذا نلقاو السيت تاعهم نكتب ستوك. هذا هو on توكا. It's just, this is pure HTML. I don't even know if they used CSS here. هو السيت تاع وارن بافيت ولا الكومباني تاع وارن بافيت. هذه رسالة تاع Warren Buffett, I guess, latest message from him. But as you can see, this is all their website is. Imagine you're a web developer for this company. They're they're worth $900 billion. تسمى they don't ماهوش ناقصهم دراهم ماهوش ناقصهم دراهم in order to make a better website. But kind of they understood ولا they understand باللي الفاليو تاع website is to communicate information. I think this is all they do. هما ما عندهمش forms or anything to fill out. They just want to get information to their readers or to their investors. This is very easy to do. This website is easy to كيفاش يقولوا easy to use. You can easily find whatever you want here. أنا نحوس على ال SEC filings تاعهم, annual reports. I can easily find them here. ما كاش something fancy to hide it from me. There is no fancy UI, no nothing, just pure functionality. You're probably able to create this right now. It's just simple HTML. So you're a web developer. You are a web developer. That's not. Maybe you should apply to Berkshire Hathaway. I'm sure they're hiring. Uh, so why did we stop making them like this? Is the question I have written here. Why did we stop making them making them like this? The reality is that it's a nuanced answer. My understanding of it is we didn't stop making them like that. It's just that our needs have slightly become more complex. وهذه complexity is often it builds on top of يعني كل حاجة تبني فوق الأخرى. لو كان نولوا لهذاك السيت ويب هو الفونكسيوناليتي المين فونكسيوناليتي تاعو is achieved بصح it can be improved with better user interface basically. يعني it's not a pretty user interface. It's functional بصح it's not pretty. وشغل being pretty ولا being beautiful basically is important. It is important. It's how companies judge or people judge things. It's how people people like to use things that are easy to use. The main proof of this is that the company with one of the a company with one of the biggest valuations في الموند. المين سيلينج بوينت تاعها هي هذه الجماليات, هذا الاماكيوليت يوزر اكسبيرينس اللي شابه بزاف, فيها بزاف يوزر فيها بزاف انيميشنز, فيها بزاف شغل يخمو زعما في افري بيكسل وصوالح هكذا. هذه هي الشيعه اللي داوها اللي هي ابل اوف كورس. لو كان نجو لشركه واحده اخرى ثاني اللي فيري famous ماشي famous, so I don't care about famous, اللي ثاني very valuable بالك more valuable than Apple. I'm not sure actually يتسابقوا مع بعضهم. Microsoft has, in my opinion, I think many people agree with this, they have very bad user experience, very bad user interfaces as well. But they're still also شغل يتسابقوا مع Apple in terms of user في market valuation, يعني الفاليو تاع الكومباني تاعهم. So كاين الجماليات هذه اللي ابل تخدم بها ولا ابل لايكس. كاين also functionality, شغل pure functionality, how good you do something ولا how many features you give the user. features they have to be thought out of course. ما تقدرش, you can't just give them all kinds of functionalities, right? So why did we stop making them like that, like the good old days disons? Because our users developed more and more stringent needs. Now we have more and more stringent needs. We want smooth user interfaces. We want user interfaces that are easy to use, that are fast, that are performant, that are also powerful. They give us all kinds of functionalities. So to illustrate that point, we're going to be making a simple website, and we'll slowly give more and more functionality to هذاك الويب as our needs develop. وش معناها as our needs develop? معناتها we will follow kind of an evolution تاع كيفاش websites used to be developed ولا were developed until our present day or تقريبا to our present day parce que it would take a lot of time. We will first create a simple document, basically the simplest website that anyone can create. So let me, in this section, uh, you don't need to follow with me in terms of coding the same things that I do. You can just follow just by watching, basically. I will be explaining everything that I do. Let's make um, let's call it day one. Sahara. Next.js. I'm creating a folder to put today's creation in. Okay. All right. So the simplest website that we can create is just an HTML document. So let's call it page.html. And here let's put just hello people watching. And if we open up this page, let me just find it and open it up in my browser. Okay. هذه هي الباج تاعي اللي كريتها دوكا. Hello people watching. So now I have a website, but I need to serve this website. I can't. دوكا هذا الويب سايت راهو just شغل راهو HTML document. In order to give ولا to allow someone else to access this website, you would have to give it to them in a USB ولا upload it to a Google Drive, which isn't very convenient. تسمى أنا نحوس على سيرفر اللي نقدر نهوستيه باش يولوا الناس يقدروا ياكسيديو للباج تاعي by for example clicking page.com or something like that يعني في URL ولا domain. So the way you do that is by creating a server. A server can be many languages. So we're going to be using the language ولا the framework, let's say, the Next.js uses, which is Node.js. Specifically, Next.js uses Express, but we're not going to be using Express just to simplify things, هذه الحاجة الأولى, made to highlight how difficult it is to create a website without a framework. This is very important, right? So what a server is that it's just a function, let's call it a function, that is constantly running listening at a certain address في الانترنت, listening for a call to هذيك port basically. So we have like a server here, HTTP create server, وهذه كامل like this function HTTP is included ولا built in. It's a I'm not sure if the correct way is to call it a library, but it's a library built into Node.js. So when you install Node.js, well, this will be at the end. يعني I'll let you know what you need to install, what you need to register for at the end of today's session. So for now, we just want to send a response that is HTML. The way we do that is we tell or we write to a response object. Let's say that we write to a response object that we are sending something, some content of content type HTML. The HTTP code 200 means that this response is not an error. It's like everything is okay. I'm sending a proper response. First, let's try sending the code directly, HTML code directly here, response.end, and we want this server to listen on port 3000. Now we should have a proper server running if everything works correctly. Localhost 3000. I need to run it first. Node.js can run, of course, Node.js can run JavaScript code. So we just say node and we give it the file that we want to run, and it's going to run it for us. Now we have a server up and running that we can access using port 3000 on our local host, basically. Now we're able to make changes to this, what we send back to the user when he asks for the this route, I don't know how to call it, the base route for our server. Right. What we want to do is we want it to read this file, page.html, and return its contents. I think you can also return the file itself, but it's more complex. It requires using pipes or streams, something like that. So I don't want to get that complex. What I want to do is load this HTML like this, file system read file sync, and let's keep it simple. Just tell it here is the file page.html. Its format is UTF-8, which is just an encoding for the letters. And I think that's all. This should be all. After I read it, I want to write to this response object the contents of this file, which I have stored in this variable. And then end, basically close the response object and tell it to send the objects. After I make each change, since Node doesn't, by default, does not watch for these changes that are happening in my editor, I need to close the server and then run it again to catch up to the latest changes. I don't know why I'm explaining Node.js this. I'm explaining Node.js right now. Uh, It's not part of the workshop really, because the subject is Next.js, but perhaps it will be useful with the backend part of Next.js. Right, so it worked. This is the content. Hello, people watching. This is the content of our HTML file. Okay, our browser needs a little more. Walef, we need a template to let the browser know what kind of HTML we're writing. So we want to tell it that the language for this page is English, the kind of encoding for the character set we're using, just a bunch of metadata. We can include a lot more actually here, but we just want the basics. The title of the page, let's call it Sahara page, Sahara page. And the content, let's put it again as H1. Hello, people watching. Let's add something else just to know an update happened. Hello, people watching. We're learning Next.js. Okay, so as always, I need to restart the server. Actually, maybe not. I'll do it here. And it's updated. Hello, people watching. We're learning Next.js. Okay, so this is enough, right? In order to achieve that level of amazing website, I think this is enough for for their needs. For a free car insurance rate quote that could save you substantial money. Is this an ad? Wow. Anyway, what else do you need in a website? Well, you probably need styling. هذه الحاجة الأولى. Because if we look at what's a good website we can take a look at. Let's take a look at GitHub actually. I want just GitHub and then داخل في account. So I want this يعني default page. Bon, it's شوية بعيدة على وين رانا. Yeah, we need a lot of work to get there, to get to this level. I'm sure we can do it with our current stack, right? With just Node.js و HTML, نزيدو CSS و JavaScript. That's the only thing that we're missing, right? Okay, so let's get on it. دوكا ايماجينيو روحنا we're GitHub developers ورانا نكريو في هذيك الباج تاع GitHub, landing page تاع GitHub. First of all, we're going to need CSS, style.css. For simplicity, I will just do something extreme like H1, give it color red. Of course, this won't work until I link it here. Which two methods? I think exactly right. Two methods. What do you mean two methods? Sending a file or sending contents of a file. Is that what you meant? Good idea of tagging me, by the way. It gave me a notification. Okay. While you answer, I will link this style sheet to uh, our page here. Okay, it's still not working. Maybe I linked it. The reason for that is uh, bon, the difference between running ال HTML من البي سي تاعي كيما انا درت شغل رحت لقيت الفيشي تاع HTML هنا و I dragged it to my page هنا هذه مع الاول كامل I dragged it to my browser وتفتحت المشكل مع هذا الابروتش سي كو اذا راك حاب ناس واحد اخرين ياكسيديو لهذيك الباج اللي كتبني فيها يعني السيت ويب تاعك هذيك هي وات an HTML page is ولا HTML file is it's a website it's a document but it's a website uh, it can be a website if you host it خلينا نولي semantics it is a website when you host it well, it's a document this HTML document الفرق بينها if you open it locally كيكون عندك فيشي كيما هكذا باش انا نقدر نشوف الفيشي ولا الفيشي اللي راك تخدم عليه ولا السيت اللي راك تخدم عليه لازم تبعث لي هذا الفيشي دوت اتش تي ام ال ولا باج دوت اتش تي ام ال اندكس دوت اتش تي ام ال كيفاش تبعثه لي فلاش ديسك ولا درايف ولا شغل هكذا تسمى ما نقدروش كامل اذا عندك 100 واحد راه حاب يشوف الباج تاعك ما تقدرش تبعث لهم كامل هكذاك it's inefficient عليها هنا تخدم with Node.js. Node.js is a server اللي يسيرفي basically that's what it does it serves it gives people الباجة تاعك when they ask for it nicely when they ask for it using the domain ولا ال IP اللي راك you are hosting it at right now هذا Node.js server تاعي راه عندي برك في البي سي انا مي لو كان كونفيغيري النتورك تاعي بون ماشي النتورك ouais, let's call it a network for simplification لو كان نكونفيغيري البي سي تاعي باش نفتحوا للكونيكشنز تاع الناس اللي برا نقدر نقول لكم نتوما شغل اكسيديو لهذا الاي بي باغ اكزومبل بون مانيش عارف الاي بي تاعي 156 123 something هكذا 3000 كي نتوما تدخلوا لهذا الاي بي راح تخرج لكم الباجة تاعي هذه الباجة مي it needs configuration عليها الناس يشروا سيرفرز external servers باسكو مانيش حاب انا نفتح البي سي تاعي to your connections باسكو that could be a security vulnerability انا البي سي تاعي فيه مي دوكيمون بيرسونيل etc mais basically that's the difference using Node.js it allows many more people to access هذاك الفيشي if you host it on a server اللي dedicated لهذيك الحاجة وش معناها dedicated معناها ما فيهش حوايج personal تاعك that is always running 24 hours 7 days a week no downtime basically as little downtime as possible هكذا اي واحد يقدر يكسيدي السيت تاعك at any time no matter where they are etc well that's the answer you can use other servers other than other frameworks ولا libraries frameworks to host هذاك السيت تاعك you can use pretty much every programming language has a framework for creating servers for the web. Whether we're talking Java, whether we're talking C Sharp, C, Go, Rust, PHP, yeah. Okay, so where we left off is we were talking about getting a style sheet, معناها styling this page. We tried doing that like this اللي هي لينكي وهذه الباجة مي هذا الفيشي style.css ما هو راهو يكزيستي theoretically ولا technically راهو يكزيستي في السيرفر ماهوش يكزيستي عند البراوزر دوكا السيرفر والبراوزر راهم في نفس البي سي، مي كيما كنت نشرح باللي السيرفر يقدر يكون في بي سي شغل way on the other side of the world basically. So in order to tell it that to get this style sheet, I will need to tell it something like this: HTTP localhost go to this domain بعدها get this file. مي this requires extra configuration. تسمى واش نقدر ندير؟ نقدر كيما كنت نسيرفي هذا الفيشي HTML للناس using my server، نقدر نسيرفي my CSS file using also Node.js. I just tell it to go get this fichier from my Node.js server اللي hosted at port 3000 the local host, and I create up my screen. Ah wait, it is frozen. Let me restart. Uh, I will just rehost it. Okay, Luca, I should be on the, no, this is the wrong page. These are. Okay, this is the correct one. Now it should work. Yeah, well, it's working. Okay, thanks for letting me know. As I was saying, we want to service the style sheet the same way we serve an HTML file. So we're going to tell our server to just serve it if they ask inside this route. So we want them to do /style to get this file. In our server, this value اللي هي request.url هي اللي it contains the information هذه, whether they are on the slash يعني ال base directory ولا whether they wrote something else. It will show up there. So we're going to be doing this. إذا ال URL that they asked for هي ال base URL, I will give them my HTML. Here you go. Else, otherwise, if they ask for this URL اللي هي style/style, I want to read the same way the CSS would just give it to them basically. All right. I will restart my server to load these changes. Now it should boom. I'm saving this. I'm saving this. It should work, but it's not working. Okay, let's debug it. Request, I'm loading the style, and I'm giving them that style, the CSS. If they ask for /style in the page HTML, I'm linking a style sheet from this URL, localhost 3000. No. What do you mean localhost is already /style? I think here the problem is with HTTP localhost 3000/style sheet link. Maybe I typed something wrong. Style. The best way to try it actually is if I go to HTTP localhost 3000 هنا normalement يرجع لي style يرجع لي color red. So let's check the network. It's loading the style properly. So it's loading it. I get it. For server, I should specify which kind of file I am returning. باسكو دوكا I am setting the header as sending back HTML in all cases. راني حاب كي نرجع HTML نقول لهم باللي I'm gonna return HTML بصح كي نجي نرجع CSS I put here CSS basically. It's as simple as that. So I'm letting the browser know كيفاش handle لي هذا التكست that I am returning باسكو to it راني نرجع غير text or in both cases راني نرجع text. تما كي نقول له راني نرجع text اللي هو HTML it will treat it as HTML. So now my my style sheet should be a style sheet. I need to as always restart the server. I am getting CSS. My title is red. Okay, now we're getting يعني شغل our goal اللي هو github.com. The styling part is done. What we need is some more content. وهذاك الcontent يكون dynamic. باسكو par exemple, if I click here for on the search bar تاعهم you can notice باللي هذا element هذا السيرش element اللي كان يكزيستي من قبل اللي ما كانش يكزيستي من قبل ولا ما كانش يبان يولي يبان. It's interactive. That's what it is. The word is interactive. So how do we add interactivity? نسحقوا JavaScript. Basically, we just do the same process again. We create a new file, script.js. We will fill it later. For now, let's just make sure that it's let's say that we want to console log hello world, and we link it as always to our HTML. We tell it, hey, we want to load this script from source/script. In the server, we add another condition for people or for browsers asking for our script. We return a JavaScript, the content of our JavaScript file. Message, okay, I'll let you finish your question. Now, what I should be seeing في console is hello world, of course, as always. Remember to restart your server. Boom, hello world في console. So my page is getting JavaScript. What a great achievement. Right, so we don't need just JavaScript, we need content. So let's start making content. First, I want you all to know that this is the greatest workshop ever. I want to ask you if you agree. Do you agree? And you have two options. You can either say yes. Now we're gonna give this button the value of yes. Or you can say yes, but enthusiastically. Enthusiastically. I hopefully did not mispronounce that. Okay. Now we will call this enthusiastic yes. She response. بصح هذيك if. Okay. Regarding your question, Zaki, I'm guessing still. The reason for هذا multiple if statements is كما قلت لكم قبل ولا like okay, perfect. So Zaki and the others, the reason why we do have if statements specifically for Node.js is because for Node.js your whole server lives inside one function. So a server is just a function that is always listening, so that it is always active, listening for people calling it. So when someone calls it, it will be this function اللي راني حاطها هنايا will be called. I will get these two parameters, request to response. No matter which way they call it, يعني in a website you have many كيفاش يسموهم routes. You can do /home, slash posts, slash I don't know, profile, etc. In Node.js, all of these are the same. They all get called they all get directed to the same function. The way we differentiate between them is inside هذا البارامتر اللي هو request, we will get this value اللي هي URL, and it will include the route that the user is asking for. It will also include other things like request cookies, for example. I think cookies, that should be that. يعني it does exist. For example, method get ولا post ولا put ولا update ولا delete, I don't know. It will also include, like I said, the cookies. So our job then is to figure out which route the user is asking for. هنا the routes that are defined by our server هما هذو ثلاثة. So if he doesn't ask for هذو ثلاثة, I should tell him, yo, missing no such route. So my default response here 404, this one. Boom. 404 معناها ما كاش. 404 not found. هذا route does not exist. Yes, هذيك ال local host تسمى دوكا عندنا في السيرفر تاعنا. If someone calls a style, we will give him the contents of our style sheet اللي هي style.css. تسمى our page, our HTML page. It's راهي تقول للسيرفر اعطي لي هذاك الكونتنت باش نقدر نخدم بهم في هذه الباجة. So this is where we're asking for them. Right, perfect. Okay, so our mission here to build the GitHub page or something like it. We want to ask the user if they agree, and then we want to add interactivity by adding this, basically describing their response. Your response here. Okay, now we have a very fancy page. Let me zoom in. A very fancy page telling us that this is the greatest. I will put it in brighter colors, in bigger fonts. You can see it. Okay, this is the greatest workshop ever. Do you agree? Yes, I clicked yes. I clicked yes, but enthusiastically. But nothing is happening. The reason for that is right now what we have is a static website اللي ما فيهش interactivity. Interactivity هي when a user does something, the website is interactive, meaning it responds to what they do visually, basically. Visually, it shows some kind of feedback. It updates something on screen, or it shows something, it hides something, it deletes something. I don't know. The way we add interactivity, as we all know, that should know, is through JavaScript. The way we do that, JavaScript allows us to manipulate the DOM directly. What is the DOM? هي document object model that I mentioned before. هما تشري هذه تاع elements. هي basically هذوما elements تاع HTML تاعنا. So this H1 is part of the DOM. It's an element in the DOM. So I can target each one individually by JavaScript. I can also target like a group of elements. For example, I want to target all buttons on my screen. I can do that using JavaScript. So what we want to do first is we want to tell JavaScript, yo, I want you to listen to clicks on these two events, on these two elements, button 1 and button 2. Okay. Oops. I want you to listen on clicks on these two buttons. But whichever one the user clicked, you should display something interactively here in this H4. Let's give this H4 a unique ID because I want to target it directly, straight up. Let's call it response, eresp bark. Okay, so in my scripts, I'm going to do this document dot get elements by query select all, query selector all, choose all buttons. Then for each button, this button, I want to give it create event listener, add event listener. Damn, I'm forgetting the syntax. Vanilla JavaScript. Now, for every click event, I want to do the following. Now, syntax for this, for example, query selector all ولا for each, I guess, will add event listener. You don't need to know it all that much بس تعلموا Next.js. I'm assuming you already know it. If you don't know it, well, it's simple. Query selector all, like I said, select all DOM elements اللي existing في DOM that match the following. And now I'm choosing a element by name, so I'm choosing all buttons. If I add a point, I'm choosing all elements اللي عندهم this class. And if I do a hashtag with a pound sign, I'm choosing elements اللي عندهم هذيك ال ID. Here I'm getting all buttons. I'm adding an event listener to them. And what I need from هذيك event is the value of the button being clicked. So I'm going to go to its data set. What the data set is هذا attribute data, whichever thing you put afterwards. For example, data name, it will show up inside this object, dataset object. Here I'm setting this value, this thing, layer value. I should be able to find it here. So what I'm going to do with it for now, here, I'll just console log it so we can see what we're working with. Okay, boom, refresh, let's see the console. I clicked yes, yes showed up here. I clicked yes, but enthusiastically, and yes showed up. Okay, so what we want to do is afterwards نخيروا using the same way we chose هذه البutton. We choose هذا ال ID وهذا ال H4 with this ID اللي هي your response. So let's do that. Let's choose document dot query selector. Choose this resp, and what we want to do is text content. We want to change its text content to the following: your response, and we add value. Well, let's do something like this: const text value. We'll add text readable response. Here we take the value. We check if he answered yes. We just say you answered. Your response was yes. Otherwise, your response was an enthusiastic yes. Now we add this readable response. This readable response here. Now, if I refresh the page again, باش نلود the latest version تاع JavaScript, now I have an interactive page. When it comes to first of all, we need to acknowledge that we just made amazing work. Right now, we were able to, well, we learned how we can create a website from scratch, without using any frameworks. That is static, yes, me interactive. So now we can basically create any landing page that we want. Basically. With exceptions, many exceptions. We can create landing pages. But as we all know, most websites that we often use ما همش just static pages. What does a static page mean? A static page هي page اللي لو كان أنا نمد لك هذيك الباجة ولا لو كان نمد لك أنا هذاك اللينك ونفتحوه في زوج, we will both get the same page. يعني لو كان أنا نمد لك هذا الباجة ولا نمد لك I will host this website we'll give you the link, we will both get this thing, يعني this page. But if any of us, for example, opens up, I don't know, YouTube or Instagram or something more obscure like Dribble, we don't get the same feed, right? أنا عندي my own recommendations, my own subscriptions. أنا عندي my own feed here. أنا عندي my own feed. Well, now this is, yeah, I have my own feed here as well. This concept is making website dynamic. What does it mean dynamic? It changes based on a few things. It changes based on if the user, which user is logged in, for example. And I'm logged in to to all three of these, websites. It also changes based on time of day, for example. Uh, if I access this page at another time, basically with YouTube, if I access it just a few minutes later, I get other recommendations. It updates pretty much every 5 minutes or something like that. I don't know exactly. Likewise with Dribble. With Instagram, I think it updates even faster depending on how many people you're following. Some of my followers, etc. It changes on depending on all kinds of reasons. So how do we add this functionality without using frameworks? Well, first of all, we need to acknowledge, for example, you can go to our server-side code, but it's getting huge. All this code, all of this, well, it's not much, it's 25 lines, but still, all of this to serve this basic, ugly HTML code. Imagine you also, all of this code هي 7 lines بصح look at how complex it is شغل it's not ماهيش évident c'est pas évident how you would when reading this what it does basically you need to read it every time uh, not very much this yeah it's this website you mean is fancy this page yes it's beautiful it has red color mais still لازم نكون متواضع Documents, query selector, okay, chooses all buttons, but that it adds an event listeners to these buttons that checks this value. Like it's so complex. So how can I get to a level of, for example, getting to an Instagram level where can stories, we can like I don't know, each item here is completely its own mini application. هنا searching is complex as well for you, not personalized. Feed, reels, I want enter messages, notifications, profile. Inside the profile can all these buttons. How do you do that using just these ugly, basic functionalities? We're going to learn that. May first, let's get back to our beautiful slides. We got فتنا ساعة so far, and we're back to slide number 3. We made a simple website. So it was actually quite complex. يعني even though it was a simple website, the behavior with the things that we learned allow for us to create a third, let's say a third of all websites that exist, but it would be very painful or very long. Do we need a frame? Do we need a server for it? I already explained. The reason we need a server for what we created is just to allow it to be seen by other people everywhere. Uh, Now we reached a point where we have to build more and more complex web applications. Like I said, they're very data hungry. There is a lot of data coming in. There is a lot of data going out. More than we can see, by the way. We only see, for example, هتكون photos. If we start counting them, there are a lot. Just the ones that are visible are a lot. For example, with Instagram, there are stories, posts, videos, the comments, the reactions, number of comments, number of reactions, the comments themselves. But each comment has an account attached to it. Each account اللي راهو يكومنتي كاين status of whether they have a story on the profile picture تاعهم, number of likes on their comments, number of comments. Damn, it's a lot. So it's very data hungry. Not to mention data that goes behind to make it work or to make it grow, etc. For example, whenever you enter a website, they ask for if you want cookies, right? If you open up settings, you will find that they ask for so many kinds of cookies. يعني not just cookies, يعني the ways that they can use your data basically. For core functionality, for statistics, analytics, for marketing, for يعني all kinds of things. All this data is being sent in the background, like وش هي الحاجة اللي راك where have you reached in terms of scrolling وش هما الحوايج اللي شغل شفت فيهم أكثر ولا that you hovered on using your mouse more etc 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 things that you clicked on videos that you paused I don't know anyway so every user interaction user interactions themselves are heavy like I said came so many menus widgets sub widgets wow headache right luckily for us the same people that are facing this problem هما are in the best position to fix it وهما engineers يعني us yes we are the ones facing this problem we are in the best position to fix it the reason for that is we like I said we're engineers we this is what we do for a living we solve problems so various efforts from developers who from well, individual developers who teams have resulted in the creation of all kinds of frameworks we're talking of course React the ones that we love hate as I said before today we're talking React, Angular, Vue.js, I don't know um, راحوا لي دوكا كامل الاسماء تاعهم Astro.js bon for backend frameworks as well mais we care about let's say front end because that's what we were focusing on before these frameworks were created usually inside teams by people working on problems uh, they were created, like I said, in order to address specific problems تحدث teams. So when we're talking about Instagram, for example, we did it like we were wondering كيفاش قدروا يخدموا كامل هذوك الصوالح. The answer is some people, like a team, probably a team inside Meta, was facing the same problem that we were facing with شغل هذا huge JavaScript files و huge server code باش يديروا كامل هذه الصوالح. هنا they created a solution اللي هي React framework. They also created many others. I mean, React framework was the one that became famous, who became known, was developed a lot more eventually. So that's the one that we work with right now. Okay, Angular, which was created by the Google team. Vue.js, I think, was open source. Whether you need to learn one of them or many of them, you really only need to learn one of them for depending on your purpose. I should answer like this. What is your purpose? وش هو purpose behind learning it? If your purpose is to get a job, then you are better. يعني it's better for you and that you go look for job descriptions of jobs that you want to work at or see what kinds of frameworks that they use. Usually, companies use one of them only. But for huge companies, they probably use multiple ones. What they will often say is they want someone who is experienced with React or Angular or Vue.js. So they ask, okay, من الآخر, if you know any one of these three, you are good enough to work with us because you already know how to create websites. So switching from React to Angular is relatively easy. Switching from React to Vue.js, likewise. Me learning from zero to getting to React, that's the difficult part. So because of that, if you know React, for example, you are likely, okay, in a good possibility that you will be hired for Angular jobs, for example. For jobs that use all of these frameworks. Sometimes companies look for something specifically. يعني, for example, they are very much in need of just Angular. They use Angular features in depth. So they need all kinds of performance, so squeezing the smallest bit of performance. They have very huge Angular applications they need to update them or add features right now. In this case, you might not have luck if you learn React. Maybe you do have luck if they have time to. So they know, but it will take you just a few weeks to get used to React, to Angular. Okay, so well, like I said, yeah, basically, another point I should mention about Hadal frameworks is Hadal frameworks, they used to be pretty different مع البداية. Mais دوكا as شغل الويب has matured, if the React team comes up with an idea that is revolutionary, let's say, well, that is good, that is just good, you will find that the other frameworks imitate it. They might change the syntax, they might change هذا الصوالح, may they just copy each other basically. The good features are always found across the frameworks, all frameworks. So you will find them pretty much the same. So you just need to get used to syntax. All right, so key points about header frameworks that we need to go to cover real quickly is header frameworks are for the most part for the most part client-side rendered. So they give the client اللي هو البراوزر that as we have seen, they give the browser everything it needs to navigate and render the changing interface of the application. The difference with what we were creating is something where شغل السيرفر تاعنا كان يمد للابليكيشن شغل البير مينيموم، كان يمد لها غير ال HTML. But if it asks for CSS, it gives it the CSS. If it asks for JavaScript, it gives it that JavaScript. It gives it only the JavaScript that it needs for that specific page when it asks for it. The client-side rendered applications came up with another philosophy, with a way of thinking. They thought, look, our servers they need to process a lot of information. We have a million users, let's say. Let's continue with the Instagram example. It's easy to understand. Our applications need to handle hundreds of millions of users. These users all create comments at the same time. They like comments, they like posts, they interact with posts, they update content, they delete content, they follow each other, they unfollow. When someone follows someone else, إذا عندهم a private account, all their posts are shown to that person. So if he unfollows, they are hidden. Uh, Stuff like that, basically. So our server needs to do a lot of calculations. It needs to do a lot of logic. لو كان نزيدو نخلطو مع هذا السيرفر نحطو فيه ثاني logic about which HTML, which CSS, which JavaScript file to give to the client, راح نوليو بشغل in enormous backends, enormous servers, server code. So if we can just simplify that by giving the client اللي هو البراوزر, we will give him all the code, the HTML, JavaScript to CSS code for the whole website, all the pages of the website, basically. We give all of it to them. بعدها we give him enough JavaScript. JavaScript is just logical code, let's say. Actually, it's a programming language, right? So you can do all kinds of things with it. From interactivity to building very complex logic. So if we give it JavaScript code that tells it here is how to render هذا الصوالح. We tell it باللي في initial state, يعني when the user visits this website, we want this search bar to be closed. Imagine هذيك search bar تاع GitHub. We want it to be minimized. We want this user to be logged out, for example. We want this thing to be hidden, this thing to be hidden, this thing to be shown, etc., etc. And we include all of that in the JavaScript. We give this JavaScript with the HTML, CSS to the user. But the browser will run هذيك JavaScript, will understand which parts of the page to show, which parts to hide. It will run it. But when the user clicks, for example, to go to another page, instead of sending a request to the server, all the way to the server, والسيرفر في هذيك logic, complex logic, no, the complex logic هذاك exists في البراوزر. Exists in the browser. تسمى هذيك الكليك it will generate a request غير في البراوزر الداخل، وهذاك البراوزر will tell ماشي tell will hide الحوايج اللي اختفوا، وبعدها show new stuff. It will show new page هذه. It will show it using JavaScript magic, basically, kind of. It's not very complex, actually. We don't have time to explain it. The problem with this, like I said, since we're sending this user all the JavaScript, HTML, CSS, is there is a heavy initial load. We don't notice it with small websites. Imagine you're loading all of the websites تاع Amazon. That's huge. Imagine شحال عندهم من باجا، imagine شحال عندهم من logic ولا all the code تاع Instagram. So much code, so much logic. It's going to take like Gnosis is just with some websites اللي don't do a very good job at hiding it. The first time that you visited them, you can wait for 30 seconds up to 1 minute for watching just the loading screen because they don't know how to hide هذيك الفاct. There are ways to hide it. You can see. And if I go to a website, for example, I'm shopping for a new phone, for example. I'm shopping for a new phone. I have an idea of what I want to buy. I go to this website وشغل لازم نستنى نص 30 seconds ولا 1 minute for it to load. I'm quitting immediately. I will wait 5 seconds, but I will quit. And now it's not a problem of internet speed as well. شغل even the fastest internet speeds, it will take 30 seconds for the JavaScript to HTML, CSS to load. Me also for the browser to understand all that JavaScript to run it. Because it also needs to do that in order to understand which things to display. Right? So I will go to another website to buy from them, or they will lose my money هذيك الويب هذيك e-commerce website. Okay. To allow all of this to happen, يعني, since we're talking about Instagram, for example, we can't give the user all the posts تاع الدنيا. He's a user logged in. We don't give him all the posts تاع الدنيا. The way we allow him to access هذيك الداتا اللي هي البوستس comments etc is we create an API. You've heard of this مصطلح before. I believe at this point you know what it means, application programming interface. What it means is just imagine it like a دار هكذا. هذه الدار it's an ugly دار اللي عندها hundreds, maybe thousands of doors. Each door you open up حتلقى some kind of data. Some doors are closed with مفتاح. Some are not. Some are public, open. مي الفلسفي تاع هذه الدار ولا تاع هذا الفريم ورك let's say الفلسفي تاعهم سي كو you can open any door at any time كيما حبيت. You can get the data تاع البوستس basically from anywhere. انا لو كان نروح نجيب الاي بي اي تاع انستغرام malgré I'm not the official Instagram website, I can get هذيك الاي بي اي. I also need an API key واحد الحوايج تاع security هكذا. مي I can access it even شغل malgré مانيش انا انستغرام, you know. I can access it at any time from anywhere. يعني from outside هذاك الويب سايت عليها تلقاو خطرات شغل they got very famous هاد ال services. They are services that use the APIs تاع other services. For example, use ال API تاع Twitter in order to calculate, for example, شحال من tweet عندك ولا which tweets are famous ولا trending etc. This is allowed باسكو client side rendered frameworks شغل allowed ولا work best ولا something like that with REST APIs. عليها تشهروا هذو REST APIs. They're not the only way to do APIs, of course. Okay, so these frameworks, they are powerful but complex as well. When it comes to the API data buffet, buffet is just an example. Because in a buffet, you can go get any food at any time. So the problem here is the client cannot run server-side code, meaning that all code اللي لازم ياكسيدي للباسدوني ولا يدير كشما calculation اللي sensitive ولازم تكون صحيحة لازم it lives on the server. وهذه مشكلة. يعني just in order to get list of users ولا list of to-do list, for example, you have to create not only a front end, but a back end as well. So it always creates this kind of problem. هذو frameworks, they're powerful but complex. So they enable an immense level of functionality. شغل if you just think about it هذا where I am showing you these slides, it's a whole application. It's a whole program, basically. It's a program that lives inside your browser. If we go back 20 years before, this was impossible to imagine. Just back when websites used to look like this, no one would have thought, but there will come a time where websites will be competing with desktop applications for functionality. Right now, think about services like I think it's called Market Watch or something like that. They're complete applications. No, not this one actually. Google Docs, Google Slides, almost all Google services, يعني for Gmail, YouTube as well. These are the services that come to mind. Facebook, je sais pas. كاين حتى editing software, video editing software that runs on your browser. Let's not get into too many examples. As you can see, they allow for a lot of a deep level of yeah, Figma, for example. Figma runs on your browser. That's crazy. So Figma is huge. So many features, so many, but it runs on your browser. So they allow for an immense level of functionality, but they're very complex. They're often too complex and boilerplatey. If you need to just set up a quick website هكذا, they give you an unnecessary level of complexity. All right. So I should have named this "What's with these frameworks?" The balance of effort in these frameworks is a lot of what am I doing? Well, a lot of UI work, not as much UI work. 30% goes into developing the user interface, while 70% of it goes into data fetching, state management, server-side code. Uh, when I say 30%, there is still a lot of work. شغل ما نقصدش الكمية تاع الخدمة اللي لازم تندار باش you develop a user interface. برك الخدمة that you need to do in order to develop شغل the data side of the application grew. Grew well, it grew basically. It kind of got smaller compared to just vanilla. It's still very big. Like I said, in order to do just the simplest functionality, you need to create الكود داخل الفريم في فرونت اند ويب سايت تاعك الكود فور fetching هذيك الداتا first of all الكود for managing states تاع هذيك الداتا meaning in case that data changes you will need to revalidate it يعني every interval for example you ask هذيك السيرفر تاعك for new data. You also need to in the case of يعني it can be changed you will need to change it locally من بعد تبعث request للسيرفر باش يتشينجيها عنده و in case هذيك request failed you have to go back to your local version you reset it to what it was before for example. You also have to set up a backend server every time for every front end واسمها that needs to access data from a database. وعلاش؟ باسكو like I said server side code does not run on the client side باسكو it's not secure there. Okay, so is there a better way to achieve هذه core web expectations that users have without using or maybe while using هذه frameworks but just improving them to achieve هذه core web expectations اللي هما like I said interactivity which we have explained, dynamic content which we have also explained, or performance parce que like I said we don't want it to load too heavily which is a huge problem. We also want for complex applications that have a lot of code we want to simplify the amount of code specifically JavaScript that the client is handling, right? So how do we improve هذه frameworks? We do it using 3 steps with one bonus step. So the first thing that we want to acknowledge is that Hadoop frameworks, they gave us a new way to, if you've used React, I hope you have, they gave us a new way, a very good way, one that is declarative, to handle user interfaces that allows for easy interactivity. What does the declarative mean? It means that in order to display something on screen that is, for example, interactive, like I said, زعما تخبي حاجة from the screen, you don't need to write that ugly JavaScript code هذا. This is imperative coding. I don't know if it's called a paradigm or well, here we're coding imperatively. تسمى رانا نقولوا للdocument ولا رانا نقولوا للJavaScript to access this document, select all buttons, etc. So we're imperatively coding. On the other hand, in React, it would have been done very differently. We don't need to tell JavaScript exactly what to do now, which item to target, which item to update, etc. This allowed for building applications much more smoothly, much more reliably, right? That's why complex applications have exploded, although easy to create, kind of. Anyway, let's move on. Step 2, we need to enable the secure use, because we don't want just anyone to get our data. The secure use of server-side code during development, ولا ثاني during runtime, for fetching and mutating data. Fetching, I explained it. Mutating, I explained it, but I'll just repeat it. Mutating is creating data and updating data, deleting data as well. So it encapsulates all of that for me, right? Another thing that we want is we want to enable server-side rendering for pages ولا for components. We get a bonus if we cache هذوك server-side rendered pages. We get also bonus for static site generation or incremental I forgot it. Incremental static regeneration. So what does server-side rendering mean? It means that for dynamic websites, right? So what are dynamic websites? So what's a good way to explain it? Dynamic websites هما websites that change depending on who accesses them. That change depending on the circumstances under which they are accessed. So if you are logged in, what you get changes. Who is logged in, me or you or someone else? The content changes. What time of day it is, content changes, etc. Right? So can we render هذا الحوايج؟ وش معناها render؟ معناتها we give the user just HTML و CSS و JavaScript for interactivity برك. Now we are rendering this page. We don't want to give the user الكود اللي يقول له كيفاش ترندري هذيك البيج. كيما هذا واش يدير رياكت شغل يمد لليوزر الكود اللي يقول له كيفاش يرندري هذيك البيج، تسمى كيفاش تاكسيدي للدوم، تبدل هذه الحاجه، تنحي هذا الاليمنت، تعاود تدخله تخرجه، بزاف صوالح. with server side rendering هذه الحاجه تسرى برا في السيرفر، والبراوزر gets just a very clean, a very fast HTML, CSS و JavaScript for interactivity. Just keep this in mind. interactivity meaning when you click a button تفتح كاش حاجه ولا تتعلق كاش حاجه. وهذاك الجافا سكريبت ما نكتبوهش حنايا، ما نكتبوهش imperatively، نكتبوه declaratively و it gets processed and given to the user, right? الكاشين هي when we build a page, when we create هذاك ال HTML و CSS و JavaScript page, we save it, right? So أنا لو كان نروح للإنستغرام و I ask for my feed, the first time that they give it to me, they will need to calculate which posts using their algorithm. We all heard of it. They will need to calculate which posts to give me, which stories are active, etc. But if I access it شغل بعد دقيقة ولا بعد 2 دقائق, maybe it doesn't need to be updated. So they can just give me a version of HTML, CSS, JavaScript that they have already created for me. So they don't need to do all these expensive calculations again. If they don't do them for me or they don't do them for you, يولو كان خطرة ولا زوج. Now we're talking about hundreds of millions of users. So any milliseconds they save on me, uh, نضربوهم في 100 مليون ولا, they are saving a lot of time. Time for them, computation time is money, right? So static site generation, that's basically the same thing as server-side rendering. So we do it at a specified point. For example, when I finish creating my application ولا my website I click build شغل هذا البندلرز يعني شغل when we're using React ولا using Next.js there is a bundler that goes through it does شغل a bunch of work because you're writing شغل a mix of JSX, JavaScript, CSS, etc. It let's say compiles it for simplicity. Uh, for static site generation, this happens at runtime, at build time, right? So we go through, we build all the pages that we can build, well, that we want to build. We put them in storage. باش anyone who accesses them can get them immediately. ما نسحقوش نعاودو نبنوهم. Incremental static regeneration is the same thing as static site generation, but it's incremental, meaning كاين some pages that need to be killed soi-disant ولا updated. They need to be updated every, let's say, every 5 minutes. We need to create a new page, right? خاطي تاع security اسكو كاين impact if done correctly, if يعني شغل for each one of these things, if done correctly, there is no impact. The responsibility for security often lies with the framework owner, mainly the framework owner, with you as a developer. With you as a developer, it's much simpler. You just have to follow the correct way of using the framework that is set out by documentation. Uh, but for the framework developer, هنا يكون البروبلم. We don't need to focus on it too much. If you do things properly, follow common sense, basically, common developer sense, you will get it right. There won't be security holes. Okay, some security practices that you need to learn or know. Anyway, so for making a framework, for making an extra bonus step is we make the framework full stack, meaning that we can create هذوك server-side routes that we mentioned before. What if we could make them, since دوكا ما ولاوش بزاف منهم, ولاو غير about calculation, for example, figuring out which posts to show the user, just simple algorithmic calculation, for example. Maybe we can use them, maybe we can do them using the same framework. The solution that satisfies all of this هي new Next.js, beautiful Next.js. The features of Next.js is that it can do both server-side rendering or client-side rendering. We say both because you're supposed to do both. You're supposed to do a hybrid approach, as I mentioned. You specify for each component, well, for each page, you decide, does this need to be rendered on the client or on the server? It's also optimized by default, meaning هذه حاجة شوية you don't need to worry about it. It's a big help, especially since we mentioned really some websites take like 30 to 60 seconds to load initially. To have something that's optimized for images or fonts or scripts, meaning for images, for example, if you're on mobile, ما تحتاجش as high quality as someone who is on desktop. Someone on desktop عنده big screen ما يحتاج high resolution image. On mobile, small resolution image. They do Next.js does that automatically using JavaScript magic, basically. A lot of these things are actually very simple if you read the document, not the documentation, the repo, Next.js repository. Solutions that they employ are sometimes simple, but intelligent, very intelligent. Anyway, it also allows for user interface streaming, meaning when you enter a web page, in order to avoid, now we were talking about intelligence. Some people are good, not some people. Some services are good at hiding it. Some services are good at hiding it. هذيك initial load. Instagram is good at loading it. What they do is they show certain things sooner than others. For example, side menu. ما فيهاش a lot of dynamic content as you have seen. ما فيهاش البوستس الآخرين. تسمى they show you side menu. بعد they show you stories باسكو they're easy to get. بعد they show you how many messages you got. و they show you how many notifications you got. وبعد they show you the posts one after the other. When something becomes ready ثم you stream it ولا you give it uh, to the user. Imagine it like راك في نهر وهما وش يديروا اي حاجه توجد يحطوها في هذيك النار وانت راك تحتها في النار وترفدها. Uh, they do this but with elements of the user interface. Next.js allows this, who does this by default actually, this streaming, where yeah, it's very effective to hide the loading times. Uh, Next is it just gives you good developer experience. Data fetching is easy. Server actions are easy. Server actions are mutating the data, updates, delete, create. It's very simple. You can run server-side code within your own repository, right? So you're building the interface, then you do server-side code, then you do data fetching, then you do mutation, all within the same repository. It's very simple to build. You don't need to switch to a whole other repository اللي هي الباك اند بعد تربط بيناتهم وتمانج state بواحد الطريقة اللي complex. You still have to manage state, definitely, yes. It's always the case. It's always the case. It's simplified باسكو you use directly code اللي يهدر مع الداتابيس. في بلاصة ما you go through a server that goes through a database. Yeah. Anyway. So how do you get started with Next.js? To the person that was asking, do we need to prepare anything? Well, this is what we're going to need. First of all, we're going to need to install VS Code without any code editor of your choice. I'll give you these slides. I'll give you some in a text message inside one of the text channels, some detailed instructions. So you don't need to remember this or take a screenshot or anything like that. You also need to install Node.js. When you install Node.js, you'll get npm by default. So that's why they're written in the same line. You will need to install Git. Technically, you don't need Git for Next.js. You do need it right now. Well, you also need to create a GitHub account. Like I said, by the end of this workshop series, we want to have created a working product, let's call it that we will be proud of. Where will we showcase it? We will showcase it on GitHub. And why not follow me there as well? Because I do need some followers. باش نبان شغل شين هكذا. Test the interactivity of Instagram by following me. This is very important. Yes, the most important step. Then we need to set up a Next.js application. Once you have Node.js up and running with code editor, well, you actually need only Node.js. You can go to the documentation that I will give you the link of, and they will give you instructions on how to create your first Next.js application. What I mean by create, I mean just get it, it needs certain kinds of tooling, right? Let's go actually to this website. Okay. Okay, here's the website. So you can either do an automatic installation, which I recommend you do. It will guide you through the installation. You just need to run this npx create in your in the command line. Or if you want to do a manual installation, now you will need to install the tools yourself. So you need to install Next.js, you need to install React, you need to install React DOM. Like I said, Next.js is a React framework. It's built on top of React. You probably also need to install other modules, other libraries, other packages as well. هما bare minimum basics in order to get a Next.js application. So it's recommended just to go through and install it automatically. وعلاش؟ Because we will also need to you will also need things like TypeScript, ESLint, Tailwind, probably not Tailwind. Oh, maybe Tailwind. App router, well, this is something different. When it comes to the app router, by the way, answer yes. It is recommended, so just answer yes. It's what we will be using. It's the latest router for Next.js. And default import alias, yes. So basically, yes for all of them, right? With a default for all of them. Doesn't matter if you don't know TypeScript with a ESLint, that doesn't matter. Yeah. Okay. So next slide, please. Right. It's not the planning of September. It's the planning for this workshop. So what we will be doing, like I said, is day by day. اليوم 23 workshop day. So it's time to attend. We have attended. Tomorrow is a challenge day, so you have time to work on this. It shouldn't take you too long. Hopefully يعني yeah. النهار اللي بعده ال 25 we will do another workshop. So it goes like that. Each time we progress more and more. Tomorrow. Next session we will be working directly, mainly with Next.js directly. We'll be working on user interface, slightly touching on some of the features. Each session we will build on a different aspect of the features of Next.js. Whether it is, like I said, rendering, the way it does rendering. أو في الفينسنت يعني في next session we will learn the syntax تاعها باسكو it's kind of special syntax, the file structure, etc. etc. So we will take it step by step. By the end, uh, we will have a working product we'll be proud of, etc. Yeah. Okay. Now, if since we have to be شغل نختصر وديجا شغل فاتت ساعة و45 أنا حبيت نديرها في like ساعة ونص برك. We have to jump through, well, we will have to as well jump through many concepts, يعني speed through them. So we won't have time to latest, Zaki, when I mean latest, yes, هما, that's for the manual installation, which you won't need to do. Latest meaning, yes, latest version, latest way. All right, so especially during the days that will come, there will be a lot of complexity that we don't cover because of time. Like for example, هنا, we basically didn't cover how to do any of these. I've left them all as challenges, which is good enough because as a developer, you often don't get everything handed to you the first time. You will have to search on your own. Well, part of searching is asking people questions. You can ask me directly, of course. You can post in the chat. Since I'll be kind of like the teacher of this workshop series, message me directly wherever, whenever. I'm happy to help during the event or afterwards, during the workshops and afterwards on any platform. It doesn't matter. Discord, LinkedIn, Instagram. This is kind of another prompt to for us to connect. What will happen now is, since this is the end of day one, what will happen is I will post a message on one of the text channels. I'll tag everyone, of course. I'll post a message about today's challenge in depth, what you need to do, and you can either get started on it today if you're still energetic, you've learned a lot, or you can get started on it tomorrow. And we will cover what you have achieved day on the second day of the workshop. I would, yeah, I recommend, well, I would love if you would share your progress as we go through the challenges, meaning, John, we don't need to wait until the day of the event to share your progress. Currently, just for installing these packages, for example, ما كاش شغل a lot of visual progress. Yeah, so I'm mentioning that right now. Do we inform you when we finish the challenge? Today's challenge is very it's a lot of setup stuff like that. So ماهوش حاجة شابة ولا. In the future, there will be a lot of visual challenges, right? So you will need to write something, write code, build an interface, build backend routes. I would love to hear from. In fact, okay, let's put it as the rule. Anyone who finishes a challenge, will a part of the challenge, or makes progress even, right? Who needs help with something, for example, share it in the, we create threads for this, share it in the thread, and so that people get motivated, so that your work gets acknowledged, because this is very important. You want to gain visibility. You want people to recognize that you're advancing. This is also an important aspect of why, by the end of this challenge, I want something for you to showcase on your GitHubs, to showcase also on your LinkedIn's, for example, wherever يعني هكذا. It's important for you, if not now, in the future when you begin searching for work. It's networking, it's publicity, it's marketing, etc. Okay, so this is the end of day one. I hope you enjoyed, of course not. May you benefited from this, from today's session. And thank you all for attending. I'll post the message shortly. See you guys later. Unless you have questions, which I think you've been posting all along when we were talking about it. Thank you all for attending. Thank you, Zeki, and thank you, Zeki, for all your great questions. And I don't know how to read your name, Med Muhammad, probably, for helping Zeki out, helping all of us out. Thank you, Abdu, Ikram, for organizing this, Blank for attending as well. If you need anything, I'm here. Thank you, Hisham. Oh, thank you, Hisham. Yeah, that's all for me. I hope you had a great, I hope you have a great Sahra, صحة فطوركم, صحة سحوركم. I'll see you guys on Discord or every other messaging platform. Okay. دوكا تقدروا تبداو تخرجوا باسكو مانيش حاب نخرج الاول تو السين بعد رايت. باي باي. Take care everyone. صحة سحوركم.